Elections are very important. They are extremely important in maintaining stability, in maintaining peace in any society. And our society, our country, our nation is not an exception. Elections are based on data, on statistics. And if there are disputes, if there's no transparency in the way statistics are put up, on which elections are based, there's bound to be trouble. We have seen trouble flare up in many parts of our continent. We have a problem in our neighboring country, a country of our origin, for most of us, the DRC. The DRC is on fire today, partly because of inability to hold elections that are acceptable by all the participants. We don't want that to happen to our country. We have been peaceful. There has been stability in our country because we have held elections that are based primarily on data that is respected and acceptable in the main to all the participants. The previous governments did not do that much to manipulate the data on which elections are based. And the data that the Zambia Statistical Agency produces is not also only for elections. It is also for resource allocation countrywide. If you inflate figures for certain regions, for certain areas, it will mean more resources will need to be allocated to those areas than it should have been if the correct figures were applied. And it distorts national planning. It affects national development. We saw what used to happen in Nigeria, in the federal states of Nigeria, where figures were inflated because those figures of populations went with the social allocations. The more numbers you have in your state, the more you receive from the federal government. And we have seen problems that are there in Nigeria. We don't want that to happen. And also statistics that come from our ZAMSTATs are not only for Zambia, they are for global use. That's why there are so many institutions that fund that process. From UN agencies, USAID, this time even private institutions, private banks helped to fund that exercise. It is important that there's integrity, there's transparency in the figures we get from there. If we don't, so many things become distorted. Economic development, economic resource allocation becomes distorted, and the politics becomes distorted. The elections become distorted. And you know what happens when elections are distorted. I don't need to go much into disquisition about that.